What's up, world? It's your boy, the Bearded Brother. What's up, world? It's your boy, the Bearded Brother, and I'm back with episode 3 of the Bearded Tasting in season 2, to be exact. And as each week passes, the conversations get better and better. So if you haven't started listening yet, it's time to tighten up and get it together and jump on the Bearded Tastings. But today, I'm super excited because I got a dear friend on with me, going from meeting from WeWork when she was in just a 2-person office to this tour that's virtual and has served up over thousands of people, like 10,000 people or so, with Black History Facts in Nashville. And also, she has the name of one of my favorite ad-libs in one of my favorite rap songs by Gucci Mane, Chakita. So if you recognize that name beyond the show, beyond the song, you definitely know who I'm talking to today. And today I got Chakita Patterson of United Street Tours hanging out with me today in the studio. And so she's an activist, educator, and an entrepreneur. But enough of hearing about me and hearing from me. Chakita, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Glad to have you. And just kind of going into the story of United Street Tours. I've been in Nashville almost 12 years, and I've never knew the Black history information here in the city. Of course, you have TSU, Fisk, Jubilee Singers, and things like that. But like, I didn't know downtown was so rich in Black history. Like, how did you find out about it? And then how did you get to the United Street Tours and being able to share this information with everybody?
So what I will say is like that's very common for us to like not know the Black history in cities. It's very common for us to not know Black history in general because it's designed that way, right? Systems have been put in place for us not to be able to access or have interest in our history and Black history, which is American history in general. And so how I came about starting United Street Tours is I was a dean of students at a high school in Nashville, and so I've always, in some form or fashion, been in the education field, and so I was the dean of students, and one of my jobs or one of my roles or responsibilities as a dean of students was to program around specialty months, right? Like Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month, and things like that. And so when Black History Month rolled around, I just said, hey, I want to get, my students involved in what they want to do for Black History Month. Because, in high school, when you in your late 20s, early 30s, they think we old. So they ain't trying to do what we trying to do. They like, we don't listen to that music no more, y'all old, right? And so I'm trying to get their little voices at the table to see, what do y'all want to do? What interests you guys at this time, at this age? Because I want it to be something that's impactful, right? And so the first thing I did was just went around during their lunch hour and just, went to tables and started talking to them like, okay, what Black history figures, dead or alive, right, inspire you today? And so I was getting like the Rosa Parks, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s and things like that. And I'm like, it's so many dope Black people out here doing amazing things. And year after year after year, from when I was in school, from my mom's in school, from my grandma was in school, we all Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. down, okay? Not to take away from his legacy. He was an amazing man, powerful legacy. I just want to add to that conversation as far as like there are other people out here doing great things, right? And so I did what any normal person would do. I just got frustrated with them not knowing the level of Black history that we are expected to know as people of color, right? And so I just started complaining about it. I started complaining, these kids don't know nothing about Black history and so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. And so one of my friends was just like, listen, aren't you the dean of students at that school? And I was like, yeah. It was like, well, if anybody can do something about it, it's you. And I was like, dang. You know, at first I had to ask,
Right.
like, who you think you talking to, right?
Watch
And
your
then I was
mouth.
like, and then I was like, wait a minute now. I'm the dean of students. I have the power to like create change where I am. And so why not do that? And so I just started like thinking about like what's a way to one, learn the Black history of Nashville myself, because I'm originally from Memphis, in order to teach it, reteach it, or introduce it to my students, so that we can create this 5 Black history program that they'll remember from high school and beyond. And so from there, I just started throwing a whole bunch of ideas at the wall. And this idea of like touring Nashville just stuck. It just kept sticking and we didn't go nowhere. And so, you know, I just started doing some research, and I, at the time, did not find any tours that was going on that I could take my kids on. And so I just hit the pavement and started reaching out to people, Dr. Lee Williams, who's in the Black history space, and just reaching out to people like, you know, what can be done, what has been done. And so like, when you know, speaking with heavy hitters, that's inspirational to, you know, put your best foot forward and put something together that's impactful and powerful. And that's what I did. And I created, my first tour was a walking tour. And the first people who took my tour were my students, and my first tour guides on my tour were my students. And then it was the teachers, some of the teachers and staff members who worked at the school. And so as I was doing this tour, you know, I started getting people from the community that said that they were interested in taking a tour. And I was like, okay, well, you know, now I know this information. You know, I took the time to like study and do research and talk to the people who I needed to talk to as far as community leaders goes. Let's put it out there to the community and see if other people can benefit from it. And so I did it, and we sold out. We kept selling out and kept selling out and kept selling out. And so at that time, I was only touring on the weekend because I was still the dean of students. And so at that point, I was like, hold on, I think I have something here, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
had to reevaluate your whole life. Like, hold on now.
It's like, did I just do that? Did I do this?
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I definitely want to kind of just jump into your voice. You're talking about your students not knowing things about Black history as they probably should have, and you're doing these tours. Did you realize that was going to become your voice at that moment, or what was that moment you're like, oh, this is how I affect the Black community with what I'm doing and what I'm saying and things like that? What was that like moment?
I don't think I had a moment where I was like, oh, wait, this is dope. Like, I'm really creating change here, until I had a tour and everybody was crying after my tour. And I was like, oh my God, like what just happened? Right? And
Wow.
everybody was like, this is what I've been looking for. Like, all of this just changed my life. Like, the stories that you told, because my tour is from the perspective of empowerment, right? So we hear about the stories of slavery, and we do talk about that on tour. Like, we don't shy away from those type of issues. But then we talk about slaves who were actually entrepreneurs, right? Who were what's called, they called back then quasi-independent slaves, who were slaves, but also had this side hustle on the side and had their own businesses, right? And was in the liquor industry.
Right.
I'm going to tell you about Black Ball one day. And so basically, you know, I started, you know, taking the history from a different perspective. Yes, from a suffrage perspective, but also from an empowerment perspective. And, you know, I think from that gave me a different voice, and I was doing things differently than the way other people was approaching our history. And so after my tour and everybody was crying, it just took me a moment to just be like, not only is what I'm doing like very fun, because I have fun when I'm walking through downtown Nashville. One, is funny. People are funny, okay?
Right.
And I get to do what I love, and I get to talk about history, and I get to walk you know what I'm saying? Like, I have fun doing it, but it's also making an impact. So that was my moment when I was like, okay, this is big.
Okay, that's awesome. And then just kind of keep going off of that. Before I move on, as y'all know, I'm a beer podcast, so of course I got to crack one open real quick for you. I'm drinking Lovebird from Jackalope Brewery here in Nashville. It's a woman-owned brewery. This is one of their specialty beers. It's a wheat beer with raspberries and strawberries. So it's going to have that beer taste, but you're going to get a little bit of fruit. So it's a very light, easy beer to drink, and it's a very good beer. If you never had beer or you don't really know beer, it's a good introduction to what good beer is like instead of stuff you see on TV. So I won't say too much about them because I don't need a slander lawsuit on my hands.
I can't.
But yeah, you see, you kind of get this little golden, nice, light, super refreshing. But speaking of refreshing, it's just super refreshing to hear you talking about empowerment when it comes to the Black community, because sometimes you don't get a lot of that. Like some of the big Black history movies, it always starts out suffrage. It's always slavery and yes, so boss and all that. And for the tours, how do you balance talk about suffrage with empowerment without overshadowing one or the other?
It's easy because Black people are beautiful, amazing, and we have done amazing things within oppression, right? So you can't. It's. I would say it's easy because it would be difficult for me to talk about the oppression, historic oppression, and current oppression that we face without talking about like the art and the beauty and the music that has been created from that. And so finding a balance is just like, all right, y'all, this is what happened during the civil rights movement. This is what Diane Nash was doing. But yes, she was like, all of them were getting talked about, hit, beat, and all of that. But look at what came from that. You know what I'm saying? And then for me, I've actually had the pleasure to meet a lot of these people. Right? So like, this is not, when people think about the civil rights movement, we, for some reason, like put it in the back of our head, like it's ancient, like it happened so long ago. But civil rights leaders are still walking around Nashville today. I'm friends with them on Facebook. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I have an uncle that was involved in sit-ins because he went to TSU back at the original Woolworth. So it's just like, it's literally in people's family. Like, that's just my mom's older brother. Like, and my mom's still around doing her thing now. And so it's just like, that's how, like, we like to use is the other day. Like, that was just the other day that was happening. And so it's just super cool that we still have people around and we still have something we can still stay connected to and connect, reconnect or connect people with that history and just getting to understand the ground they walk on. So like, I think that's huge. And I think it's just awesome that you're doing a walking tour. It's just like, you almost feel like you're walking in their shoes. And that's just super powerful. And which I do, side note, I do need to send my apologies. Me and Ashley Slack have not been on the United Street Tour yet. That's on us. Slander us if you need to, but we understand. And we've been trying. We've been steadily trying. It's just things kept just happening, but we're gonna make it happen. And kind of just going into your tours. In 2020, Panera Bread came along and shut the city down. And you were out here in people's faces, and all of a sudden, ain't nobody in the streets to walk the tour with you. So, like, what was that reaction when, like, everything just went to hell, like, pretty much? And
Listen, so 2020 was like, I had so much work in the pipeline that like 2020 was supposed, you know how people be like, this is going to be my year, right?
Yep. Look, we all had it. We all had that. Like all the holidays were falling right. Taco Tuesday was on a Tuesday.
Man.
Cinco de Mayo was on like a Saturday, and Christmas was on this day, Thanksgiving on that day, and it's like,
boom. So 2020, I remember my last tour because I had this tour group, and mind you, in 2020, Nashville, has continued to grow and bring in like conferences and all type of big organizations and concert stuff. So like I had like people come to a conference, they also want to see the city, but they want to see parts of the city that's not easily accessible or shown, like the Black history of the city. So I had people in the pipeline, and I'm on this tour, and I keep getting notifications on my phone. I'm like, what is going on? Like, nobody texts me this much during the day because everybody at work. And so after the tour, I'm looking at my phone, and there's people blowing me up saying, I need a refund, I need a refund, I need a refund. And I'm like, why is everybody needing a refund? Like, what is going on in the world?
What did I do?
Right. I feel like COVID, people became more aware of COVID up north before the South really became aware of how damaging it was. And I say that because, like, that's who was canceling and asking for refunds. It's like people that were traveling to Nashville from the north. And so, at first I was like, let me double check my refund policy because, I don't really know how serious this thing is. And so, just like everybody else, I started watching the news and I'm like, wow, this is a lot. But the thing is, like, during in March 2020, my last tour, a lot of people canceled, but so many people still wanted their tour. Like, it's different groups of people, right? You have groups of people that's like, nah, we're not going to chance it. And then you have those group of people that's be like, I'm going to put my faith in Jesus and we just going to come on down here and have us a hallelujah good time. And so I had to make the decision, as a small business owner of which way I was going to take it. Am I going to actually still try to tour the people who want to do a tour, or am I going to shut this thing down and say, hey, well, let's see what happens? And so, not knocking, however, anybody, decided to move during this transition because this was new to all of us. I just personally made the decision that March 2020, that was going to be my last tour until we figured out what was going on with the COVID situation. And being that we still in the midst of the COVID situation, I haven't gone back to live tours at this time, but I moved into the virtual space.
Gotcha. And with that, you're just kind of just like shocked. So, like, was that pivot immediate, or you're just like scrambling for some time, and then you're like, oh wait, I can do this virtually?
So was the pivot immediate? No, I had a freak out moment. Yeah, I had a freak out moment. It lasted for like maybe 2 months. And I was just like, what am I doing here? What am I going to do here? Like, and I had to kind of talk myself through that freak out moment. That's like, all right, we're here now. We've been here for a minute. We ain't going nowhere. What you going to do, girl? And so, just like exploring options. And then I think I have I'm blessed to have a really supportive social media community who they're like, okay, Chakita, what's next? Like, we want to find a way to support you, but you got to give us a way to support you. And so when I moved into the virtual tour space, like, it's so many people that reached out and was just like, not from Nashville, never gonna come to Nashville, don't have a desire to come to Nashville. It's like, we've been waiting on you to do something like this because we wanted to take your tour, but there's no way we're coming to Nashville. And so I ended up touring people from all over the world. I've been in the virtual tour space from all the way from South Africa to people in Europe, like literally people from all over the world, like who wanted to take my tour based on my presence, but would never or didn't think they would ever have an opportunity to do so.
Okay, I love that. Also, I want to move on everything with George Floyd and just everyone be shut in and having to see that spectacle of George Floyd. How did that work for you with the United Street Tours? And everybody's like hyper aware of what goes on in the Black community, or more double down on the ignorance. How has the United Street Tour benefited from like that? Has the impact grown, or is it just kind of still the same?
Well, I'll be careful with the word of benefited from, because I don't think any,
Fair.
Yeah. So I would say like I've always kind of sort of been in the diversity and inclusion space with education. I've always worked with Black and Brown students. In the Black and Brown student community, there are a lot of white saviors there. Before this, I was the diversity and inclusion co-director for MT Sherm here in Nashville. And so I've been in the diversity and inclusion, anti-racism and equity space. One, because I'm a Black woman and like, right. I'm gonna fight for my people because I'm gonna fight for myself. And so everything happening in the community with like George Floyd and so many other names did make people sit down and listen to the voices. Like this, Black people didn't just start saying the police is killing us. We didn't start saying we're oppressed. We didn't start saying this is not new. We didn't just start saying we're treated differently, like racism is real. But I think COVID gave people the time, the stillness, the softness to actually listen to us, right? And so when all of this stuff was going on, of course, people were saying like, white people were saying, let me figure out a way to educate myself. And one of the ways that people educated themselves is through Black history and through the resources I provide through my community called Learning to Rise Together. And so I have a community on Patreon called Learning to Rise Together. And basically what I do is guide folks with white privilege on a journey to disrupt white supremacy, right? Because we've been in this space. Black people have been disrupting white supremacy. Okay, and so Learning to Rise Together just gives white people the education and the tools that they need to help us, like not to speak for us, not to speak over us or anything like that, but to also not be silent to the issues that they see. Because I can't tell you how many rooms I've been in and experienced racism and a white person just sat there and didn't speak up. And so that's what the community teaches you to do. And that's what the community calls you out for. If you see racism or, you know what I'm saying, like have heard about it on TV and there's no statement on your part denouncing this or saying that this is wrong or actively working towards change in the community at large, you're part of the problem.
Exactly.
And I think that was hard for a lot of white people to hear, like, white silence is a problem. Like, it's time for you guys to speak up. It just doesn't need to be us fighting against these oppressive systems. You guys can help as well.
Oh yeah, I definitely understand that. Being in the craft beer space and brewery space, you definitely do face communities are built on white men with beards, either bald or with man buns, and you definitely are. But like that's what it is. You walk into any brewery that's not Black owned, that's only 1%, but that's a whole nother conversation. You walk into a white owned brewery, you're the only person of color 9 times out of 10. And so like that compliance is a level of violence for sure. Just from you obviously know something happened and you just kind of sit there wide eyed, like you know it's wrong, but you just gone there. It's like at that point you might as well just go join those white people over there. Don't try to say like, hey man, that was messed up. I'm sorry that happened. I was like, well, it's like I totally understand coming from that space and just being able to have people not be racist, but to be anti-racist. It's a difference. Just being not racist just means you just treat me right, but the person behind you treat me all the way wrong, but you just look at the corner of your eye, you act like you just poured beer, you didn't hear it, but I could see it registered, versus you actually like saying something and putting in the steps in the work to learn and unlearn things about that. And so I think that's really huge with what you were doing, because I've been keeping up on social media. I've been seeing you posting, and you started working on this program, which we'll get a little bit later in the show, maybe in the second part. But going back to your tours, going virtual, do you still feel like your impact is as strong as it was in person? Or is it a new level of impact that you're like, oh, like I found something else that people are affected by using the internet versus what they wouldn't have gotten in person?
Well, I wouldn't say better or worse. I would say it's different because the impacts are different. Yes, it is extremely powerful, right? When you have a group of Black and brown children in front of you that just got off the school bus, and they are learning about people who they've never heard of before, who made a difference in their backyards, right? That's powerful when you can walk this group of students through the city talking about Black history in an environment, because let's be honest, downtown Nashville is white, okay?
Very.
It's white. So when you got these Black kids out here with all these white folks, and you're actually showing them where this stuff took place, that's some powerful stuff. Right? And in the same vein, when you got this classroom full of private school white kids downtown, and you got them marching through the streets saying Black Lives Matter, or they're saying anything else that we chant on tour, right? And everybody hears this and sees this, and they're making an impact at a young age with their voices among all of these white people who downtown and drink beer. Now they got to hear about Black history because Chakita is here. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different impact. So then when you go to the online space, and you're not confined by being in a specific city at a specific time, at a specific moment, and you can talk to people all the way in Spain about the Black history in Nashville, and they can compare it to, what has happened in places from all over the world. That's a different impact, and that's powerful too. And so I wouldn't say one is better than the other. What I will say is I 100% absolutely miss being out there on tour. I'm an outdoorsy girl. I like being out there, connecting with people and talking about Black history. But I am embracing the online and the virtual space as well.
Gotcha. And before we get ready to wrap up part one and get ready to dive into part two, I just want to kind of ask about the tours. Are you going to get back to in-person tours? And are you going to do a hybrid where you're going to still have your online, but you're going to have in-person? And then can you take us just a sneak peek into what the virtual tour looks like for the people that haven't signed on, such as myself or anybody else, kind of what that looks like as a virtual tour?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question that I ask myself every day. After post-COVID, whatever post-COVID look like, will I be going back into the virtual space? And I would say that's really hard for me because prior to COVID, being in the live space, I didn't see myself pretty much like leaving the live space because I was having a lot of fun doing it. But being in a virtual space has introduced me to a different way of doing things. And so I don't want to say if I'm going to do a hybrid or not. I would just say, like, in the world of entrepreneurship, virtual space is not going anywhere. Like, it's here to stay. Like, we gotten used to it. And we just got to learn how to continue to pivot and level up, the way the world moves, and also create the trends and push us to different levels as well. So I don't know what's in the cards for United Street Tours as far as virtual, as far as live. I'm just gonna say I'm open to being led by God, because when He leads me, I don't go astray. Okay. And as far as what the virtual tours look like, I actually have a link to a virtual tour that I did for an organization on Learn and Rise Together. I know that we're going to go into that in a minute, so that people can actually see what it looked like if you want me to come in and do a virtual tour for your school, organization, individual, family, or whatever. But the virtual tour looked different for every organization. Like, I don't do the same tour for students as I do for adults and things like that. But generally what we do, we start off with just doing an icebreaker, something to get everybody warmed up. We learn about, what do people already know about Black history. It starts off like very conversational. And then we move into the who I am, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then we move into like the history of Nashville from a Black perspective and the Black experience of Nashville. Now, I would say like virtual experiences can be difficult when everybody had a camera off. And so I'm a big champion of y'all turn y'all cameras on, because I'm going to give you all the energy that I got. I'm going to lay it all out in this hour, right, that we have together. And so like in a live space, it's kind of, you feed off of other people's energy sometimes. And so it's like easier to do it. But in the virtual space, you just giving. So I'm like, y'all turn y'all cameras on. So if you ever do a virtual tour with me, go ahead and beat your face, because we're going to put them cameras on. We're going to have a good time.
And get those haircuts ready, gentlemen, so you can't looking scraggly out here like you ain't been at the house for about 2 years. But we also do understand at the same time. But But yeah, we're getting ready to go into part two. Of course, it's a refill break, of course. So we'll be back with you shortly.